everyone. Welcome to Material Science for Biomedical, the fourth installment of the six-part outreach webinar series organized by the Department of Material Science and Engineering at NUS. Consistently ranked among the top globally by Times Higher Education and QS, MSE at NUS has made extensive contributions and breakthroughs in areas such as research, education, and innovation, clinching numerous awards both locally and internationally. With cutting-edge research in areas such as advanced manufacturing, bio-inspired materials, edge computing, and computational material sciences, as well as world-renowned faculty members such as Nobel laureate Professor Konstantin Novoselov, Prof. Silvia Gadacek, and Prof. Barbaros Ozimas, it is unsurprising MSE at NUS is one of the leading MSE departments in Asia. I am Fadila, the moderator for today's webinar session. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce the Outreach webinar series. Organized in conjunction with the MSE Roadshow, this six-part webinar series aims to raise awareness and showcase the diverse roles and career opportunities available to MSE graduates. Over the course of this series, several distinguished speakers from various fields will each give a talk on the career pathways which they have embarked on. For a more interactive experience, the webinar will be split into two parts. The first being the talk by the invited speakers, followed by the Q&A session, where the panel, comprising of the invited speakers, Associate Professor Daniel Blackwood, Deputy Head for Education and Student Affairs, and Associate Professor Ng Wei Bing, founder of Sporogenics Private Limited, will answer questions posed by members of the audience. Members of the audience may submit their questions in the webinar Q&A and indicate if they would like a specific speaker to answer their question. Do remember to complete the survey when prompted at the end of the webinar. To kick off today's session, I welcome Associate Professor Daniel Blackwood, Deputy Head for Education and Student Affairs at MSE, to give the opening speech. Prof. Blackwood, please.
Okay. Thank you for coming. I'm going to give a basic introduction to the department. Okay. So we're the Department of Material Science and Engineering at NUS, which obviously, hopefully by now you would know. A few things about why you should come here. We're actually the first department in the world, or the first in the world, to have a dedicated institute on functional intelligent materials. It's a university institute, but all the professors are linked to our department. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. As far as world rankings are concerned, we're ranked 5th in the world, so that's not 5th in Singapore, that's 5th in the whole world in terms of material science and engineering departments. And perhaps importantly, from your point of view, if you're going to be a student with us, when it comes to getting a job after you've graduate your degree, whether that's at the bachelor or the master's level, the employer reputation, we're #1 in Singapore and indeed #1 in Asia. So employers like our students, and that's important from your future point of view. We're also the only department in the whole of Singapore to have a Nobel Prize winner, Professor Sir Konstantin Novoselov. He joined us a little bit over a year ago, and he came to NUS because he sees us as a forward-looking department where he can further develop his ideas, and he is the founding director of this new institute. Okay, so what is material science and engineering? I'm aware that most of you, the JC, sort of know what chemical engineering, mechanical engineering is, electrical engineering, but may not be so well aware of what MSE is. Well, what we do is we take all the primary sciences, chemistry, physics, biology, and we sort of combine them all together, put in some engineering to design materials for future applications, whether that's energy storage, batteries, solar cells, biomedical devices such as stents, 2D materials, graphene, it's great for electronics, or even soft materials in robotics. The feeling of touch, right? How do you pick something up? It's easy for you to pick something up but it's not actually very easy for a machine to know how much pressure it needs to pick something up. It needs a sensor, and it needs a material that can sense that. So if you're very interested in science, so during your JC days, if you like physics, chemistry, or biology, but you want to do something with it that in the end will matter rather than just being science for science sake, then material science and engineering is the degree for you to choose. And our employment rate has been good. This was the 2019 survey, which was published in 2020. Next month, I believe the MOE will actually produce another survey. They tend to bring it out every February. But last time, even though it was COVID, we still had over 90% of our students found employment within the first 6 months. Salaries were reasonably good as well. The mean is at $3,922. The medium, a little lower, but virtually the same, right? This is in the noise level. And our top students are getting over 4,000. Okay, so we're above average in engineering salaries if you're doing material science and engineering. Indeed, if you go into AI, which is what this talk is about, you're more likely to be in this area. This doesn't mean our top students, top CAP students, this is the top earner students. There's more to getting a good job than just exam results. Okay, it's part of your personality. Have you done the right specialization, things like that. All right. And so onto specializations. We already have 2 specializations that we've had for quite a long time. One in polymers. Polymers is a fancy way of saying plastics, but there's a lot more to it than your shopping bag. Polymers are used a lot in the biomedical industry, artificial valves, biological body replacements are mostly made out of polymers. We also have nanotechnology for quite a long time. That's a lot to do with the electronics industry. But we're also launching 2 new specializations. One is on artificial intelligence, or related to artificial intelligence. That is being passed by the university and just needs MOE approval. So that will certainly be ready for when you join us in the summer. And the next specialization we're working on is biomedical materials, and that's been passed by most of the university, just needs Senate approval and then MOE. So when you come and join us, there'll be both biomedical material specialization, and importantly for most of this audience, we're having a specialization related to artificial intelligence. A little bit more achievement about our research side. We actually have 5 researchers that are amongst the most highly cited researchers in the world. Okay, worldwide, the citations are right. We do our research, we publish papers, and if other people find our papers useful, they will mention our papers in their own papers. So that's what a citation is. Worldwide, they list the top 6,600 of these top researchers, and in NUS there are 32, of which 5 are in MSE. So although MSE is only a relatively small department, we have maybe 30 academic staff, maybe. So that's, I don't know, maybe 10% of the faculty of engineering, and yet we've got more than 10% of the top researchers, not in the faculty, but actually in the university. So that shows how well our standard is compared to the whole of the university, and NUS is a very good university. So you'll be learning from the best. We've also just started, or the university has just launched a new research institute in functional intelligent materials, which is based on using AI to produce new materials with specific applications. Although that's at the university level, it's got very strong collaborations with MSE, because all the founding professors, as you can see from the list below, all 5 of these are all members of our department. Right. Barbaros is our head, Costina is our Nobel Prize winner, but also Antonio and Dario and Masajic are all part of our department. So it's the world's first research institute on functional intelligent materials. It's over $200 million investment over 10 years, so that's a lot of money, and they will be employing researchers and PhD students, approximately 100. So it's 10 years, so you join us now. In 4 years' time, you will graduate with your bachelor's degree, or in 1 or 2 years' time, if it's a master's degree, and then you have a chance to do a PhD in this institute. And this one is also for admission, so I'll let you scan that if you want the QR code for undergraduate admissions. Is this one here? And if you're interested more in MSE as a whole, you can scan the code for the MSE interest group, and after you join that, you can ask any questions you like to the interest group. This includes some of our students and alumni who can give you a more direct answer than maybe the professors would. Okay, so that's my last slide. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Prof. Blackwood, for introducing the department. In today's webinar, we are fortunate to have with us two speakers who are no stranger to the field of biomedical research. They are Associate Professor Benjamin T. and Dr. Viveka Kalidasan. Welcome to today's webinar session, and thank you for joining us today. First up, we have Prof. Benjamin T., an associate professor in the Department of Material Science and Engineering at NUS. Prof. T obtained his PhD from Stanford University and was awarded the Singapore Stanford Biodesign Global Innovation Postdoctoral Fellowship and the National Research Foundation Fellowship in 2014 and 2017, respectively. His research interest lies in the development of novel, flexible electronic sensor devices by leveraging cutting-edge material science research and artificial intelligence for future healthcare applications. Prof. T, please.
Okay, thank you so much for the kind introduction, Fadila. And to the participants, welcome to this MSE Roadshow. I am very excited to share with you some of our work at the Material Science Engineering Department, specifically related to biomedical applications. Okay, so you can see my screen, I hope. If you can, maybe give me a thumbs up, or yeah, you're not allowed, you cannot do thumbs up, right? You can drop a message. Okay, great. All right, and so there's also Q&A, there's a Q&A section, right? I think you can also feel free to ask questions any point in time, right? And then we will get to the Q&A, I think, at the end of the session, right? So please don't be shy. So I'm Benjamin T, and I've joined NUS for some time, about 4+ years, and I'm very excited to be working in biomedical applications by applying material science and engineering principles, right? And myself, I'm a trained electrical engineer, but I decided to join material science because I realized how important material science and engineering is to the society, right? Let me explain what I mean, right? Okay, let's maybe have a very simple question, right? I mean, what are some of the materials, since we are talking about materials, what are some of the materials that you think humans started working with? Oh, there's a black box. All right, so I have a question for the participants right in the audience. What are some of the materials that humans have started to use in the very early days of civilization? So you can give the answers in the chat, or you can put answers, yeah, probably the answers in the chat. It's probably the easiest. Anybody try to hazard a guess? Maybe I'll give like a few seconds, 10 seconds. Okay, you can see in the Q&A, is it? Okay, well, probably it's okay. Maybe I'll just, well, think about it. I'll just give you the answer right now. The answer, is that some of the earliest materials humans have been using, right, is essentially stones, right? So we're very used to making shelters and so on, right? Very simple, basic, very large scale structures, right? When civilization first started, when humans first thought about, right, how to protect themselves from the environment, right? Because that was a basic need at the time. Right? But as society progressed, we come up with more understanding of materials, how we can shape them, use them for different tools. We got better, right, at developing materials as tools, right, to use for different applications, right, different use within society. Besides functionality such as structural, right, we start to use them for computing, right, and that's kind of how humans have progressed, right? We moved from Stone Age to the Bronze Age, where we started to purify certain natural elements out from their raw mineral form, right? Bronze is an example, and then we have iron, and then we kind of use those for different tools and for different functions, right? Some good, some bad, but they're all basically making use of materials understanding, right? And after that, in the last 50 or 60 years or so, we really figure out how to use materials for making our lives a lot more comfortable, and perhaps we can do a lot more things within the same amount of time. And also it can allow us to live longer, right? A very good example is mRNA vaccines, right? I think all of you have thought about probably, sick of COVID already, right? But basically the vaccines, mRNA vaccines in particular, right, actually relies on certain understanding of lipids. And these are certain basically materials, very nanoscale materials that we use to deliver the RNA vaccine, right, into the cells. And so all these relies on understanding of materials both at a very macro scale and then all the way to the nanoscale, right? And I think that materials understanding and development play a very key role in the progress and development of human civilizations, and it will continue to do so for the foreseeable future, right? And so in my research, I'm very interested to study how we can use materials for healthcare applications. And one of the common materials we've been using to interface with humans have been traditionally very stiff materials. Most of you may not know the term Young's modulus, but basically Young's modulus is a way to measure how stiff a material is, right? So if you have a very high Young's modulus, right, 10 to the 12, you will basically be very stiff. Diamonds are around this range, right, between 10 to the 9, 10 to the 12. Silicon is a technology, a materials technology that we use in all smartphones and electronic gadgets, right? And they are also very stiff. Metals are also very stiff. But turns out that when we want to have things interface with humans, right? If you want to make, for example, understand your blood pressure or understand your brain waves and so on, or your muscle activity, the human skin is a very soft material, right? It's about 1 megapascal, 10 to the 6 in terms of Young's modulus, right? And the human brain is even softer, right? 200 pascals, a jelly. Yet they can perform very sophisticated functions. And so what we are trying to do is in material science and engineering research is to figure out how we can use and develop new kinds of material that can behave like skin, right? Or even compute like the human brain, but are very soft as opposed to stiff materials like silicon or gold or copper, and metals that we're traditionally used to, right? And one of the, this is perhaps a funny image, but definitely don't try to do this, right? I wanted to use this photo to illustrate that the human skin, right, is a very stretchable substrate or material and is able to stretch and still function. In this case, this person, H. Turner, has a genetic disease that allows his skin to stretch more than the average person, right? But I think the point is that if we want to put electronics on skin, we want to make them a lot more soft because they need to be able to flex and bend and stretch like human skin. And so in material science and engineering, we have this opportunity, right? Because we have been developing many different kinds of materials in the past for computing or sensing applications, right? It gone from very big room-sized computers to now the smartwatch that has the computing power of a supercomputer back in the 1970s, right? So all of you are essentially wearing a supercomputer, right? And that all relies on understanding of how materials work and how we can use the materials properties to its advantage for us to do things like computing, add, subtract, sense, your touch, take videos or photos and so on. So at the same time, in the past 30 years or so, after silicon has sort of began developing into applications, we have also started to realize that we can use soft materials like plastics or materials like or nanomaterials like graphene, carbon nanotubes to perform some of these computing functions. And here's some photos of examples of where we can incorporate sensing elements or display elements directly onto skin. Right? And these are just using nanomaterials. For example, here you have a smart bandage that can display a number. Right? The number can be representing a body temperature, for example, and so on. So we can now interface materials that are intelligent, right, very closely with humans. In the future, I think that the continued development of material science and engineering applications, right, will drive new kinds of gadgets that we won't even need to carry with us, right? Your shirt and so on will be embedded with all these sensors, and that's where I see a lot of opportunities for MSE and understanding of MSE for biomedical applications. So one of the things I've been developing in my group is to make materials very sensitive to touch. Human skin, for example, can sense a wide range of pressure, right, from very soft cotton cloth to very stiff materials like a rope or stone. Right, so we can engineer materials and develop them in very specific shapes. We can shape them at a micro scale to have very specific response to stress. And as a result, they are a lot more sensitive to touch. I won't go into so much details, but basically here is a simulation that shows the pyramidal structure that we can make out of rubbery materials, soft materials, that behaves 10 times softer than its original mechanical properties, right? Just simply by shaping it properly. And we study the mechanical properties of these type of materials in our group, right? And how we can process them. And we also develop tools such as search engines that allow us to predict how they can behave electronically, right? So these are very useful examples of how we can now use materials for different applications, right? For example, if you want a very sensitive pressure sensor, what can it be used for? If we can have a pressure sensor that's soft and sensitive, we can perhaps put it on your wrist. And all of you probably have felt your own pulse before, right? If you are doing an exercise and you want to count your heart rate, use your fingertips to press on your wrist and you get a pulse, right? And so you can probably only pick up one pulse at a time, but if you have a sensor that is very sensitive and can record continuously, you're able to see the entire waveform. Right, and these are certain medical terms that they use to represent the timing of how the blood flow in your arteries. And so these timings and the value of its peaks will tell us whether you are a healthy person or you need to cut down on eating too much fatty food and so on, because the shape of this waveform will change as if your health is deteriorating, right, due to diet or other diseases, right? And it turns out that this is something that our Chinese doctors, TCM doctors, have been practicing. Right? They take a lot of years of training to be able to understand how pulse waveforms can correlate with your health. And with technology and the right mix of technology, material science, and data analytics, we can do the same thing. Right? And this is quite an exciting area. So another, of course, we can make them very sensitive, right? But using very soft materials presents challenges to us as well, right? So most of you have probably eaten a chewing gum or maybe like a blue tack. Right? These materials are very soft, and you say, oh yeah, maybe I can use their soft property as a sensor. But it turns out that because they are soft, they do have this material property we call viscoelasticity. Right? Basically, what it means is that they take some time to return to its original shape. And when you want to, and if you want to collect good data and sensor data, right, what you want is for the material to very quickly regain its original shape so that it can proceed to measure the next incoming data stream, right? For example, the next pulse, the next heart pulse. And so it turns out that by going to very soft materials or making materials very soft, they have increased viscoelasticity. So this is a problem, right? And this is something that we've been trying to solve. And one of the approach we did was we managed to combine materials engineering to develop a sensor, right? Here you see a graph, right? I assume most of you are quite familiar with graphs by now, right? The x-axis is the pressure, the y-axis is the sensor data, right? What we measure. So if you are very viscoelastic, you tend to have a non-repeatable waveform, which means that if I take a reading, it could be 5 or it could be 10 kilopascals, I don't know. But if you have a very low hysteresis sensor, which is what we developed in the red and blue squares here, you can see that for one reading, you have a very accurate, it corresponds to a one-to-one correspondence to pressure, right? So this can then be applied to put on wearable sensors across the whole body. You can monitor your carotid arteries, your radial artery, and all these different sensor data will be able to tell us how fast your blood is flowing through your body. And this can be very useful for high performance athletic training or for people with hypertension and so on. So these are some of the things that we can do if we can engineer materials well, right, to allow them to achieve the right kind of performance. Okay, so we can also, right, imagine having robots that have this capability and have the robots read our pulse, and the robots can actually tell us, here we have basically like a prosthetic hand, but essentially behaves like a robot hand. They can then measure your pulse, right? Imagine in the future, everybody will have a robot in your homes. Using our technology, the robot can actually be your Chinese doctor, be your TCM, right? And predict whether, what's wrong with it. This is just a sort of futuristic example. The next thing I'd like to highlight is that the human skin is a very amazing organ, right? Even though it's soft, it allows you, even if you don't have vision, allow you to understand the environment, the world, right? It lets you feel. And definitely don't try this at home. This is a chef that's blindfolded, but he's using his fingers and his sense of touch to understand what's happening and manipulate objects. If you lose your sense of touch, turns out that a simple action, right, such as lighting a matchstick that all of us have done before, will be difficult if we inject lidocaine and numb the nerves carrying the signals from your skin sensors right to your muscles and brain. The same action now will take a lot longer, right? In fact, it takes at least 5 times longer to light up a matchstick, right? This is similar to having, if you sit down cross-legged for very long and your leg feels numb and you can't walk. That's exactly the kind of feeling if you lack the sense of touch, right? And why is this? Why is this important? But this is important because we are trying to make soft materials that can behave as skin, and in the future, the ability to have prosthetic devices, right? For example, if you have diabetes and so on, without the sense of touch, will make them a very dumb device. Right? Most of you may have watched some movies like science fiction movies like Battle Angel Alita and so on. You know that some of these futuristic scenes, right, require us to be able to build sensors like skin on robotic prosthetics, for example. And so here's an example of what we did. Right? We developed a skin technology. It allows us to transmit a lot of data very quickly to some form of AI or machine intelligence, machine learning algorithm, right, to determine what you're touching, right? So using the same kind of sensor technology, and then we can combine it with machine learning, right? We can tell, for example, here's a prosthetic hand, and tell what the object properties are, right? Whether it's hard or soft. And here's a actual video recording, a live video recording. Is this a real tomato? Yes, it's a real tomato because it's soft. But for vision, it may not be easy to tell. I think in the future, right, I think there's a lot of exciting applications for material science to take part in. Here's another very recent example of a completely paralyzed lady, right, who's able to now control a robotic arm with implanted sensors in her brain. As I mentioned, the brain is very soft. So we have to develop materials that can interface with very soft tissues, right, and be able to control objects such as a robot. And so fully regain capability. I think there's just a lot of exciting applications in terms of what we can do when we apply material science and engineering to biomedical applications. Very recently, you may have heard, we won the James Dyson Award And this is the first time that Singapore team, right, and these are a team of students from MSE. Kalu is a PhD student that basically won the award by putting our sensor, right, the sensors that we developed for use in measuring eye pressure. Right? And this is the first time we actually, in 17 years, that the Singapore team won the James Dyson Award. So it's a growing recognition that material science can be applied to a lot of biomedical applications. And if you're interested, feel free to talk to me after this if you are interested to find out more. And I think I've come to close to the end of my talk. Basically, I'd like to summarize to say that MSE has been is critical, right, to many applications in biomedical and health, and that is a highly disciplinary topic, and also science that is able to interface with different disciplines, right? So when you take an MSc degree, you have a broad base to start with, and it opens up all kinds of careers, whether it's in AI or medicine, right? And that's sort of the advantage of a material science and engineering degree. All right, I think with that, I'd like to end my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. T. I'm sure the audience and myself included are actually very excited to see how the research work done by your group will revolutionize healthcare as we know it. Next up, we have Dr. Viveka Kalidasan, an alumnus of the department. Dr. Kalidasan is currently the Technology Development and Commercialization Lead at the Institute of Bioengineering and Bioimaging at A*STAR. Prior to that, she was a research fellow in the department, in the Wireless Bioelectronics Lab at NUS, where she developed a patient-centric and futuristic wireless sensing platform technology called WISE. To date, she has received numerous accolades in recognition of her research excellence. This includes the Lotus NUS Healthcare Award, the Young Investigator Award, and the Singapore 100 Women in Tech 2021. Dr. Kalidasan, please.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm very happy to meet you all through this virtual roadshow and share with you my journey through the world of material science and engineering. I'm Viveka. I'm one of the alumni of NUS MSE, and I did my PhD between 2012 to 2016. So a quick background about my education. I'm a person who was always fascinated by biology, medicine, because my parents are doctors and I grew up in that kind of an environment. So I went on to pursue a bachelor's in biotechnology. And also during my biotechnology, that was an up and coming field then, back in 2006. So one of the courses was an introduction to nanotechnology. So that was really very interesting for me. So I did a master's in medical nanotechnology. During my master's, I was working on different class of materials like carbon nanotubes and, tissue engineering scaffolds and all that. So I thought, okay, I want to do a PhD in material science. So just a quick thing is that I always wanted to do a PhD. I was not sure what I wanted to do a PhD in, but even after my school, when I joined my bachelor's in biotechnology, I thought I will not be working for a corporate or an industry job. Back then, that was my thought. I'm not saying that's bad, but yeah, I wanted to do a PhD. So after my master's, I understood that I wanted to do a PhD in material science because, yeah, look around us, everything around us, living thing, non-living thing, doesn't matter. Leaf, the dress that we wear, anything is made up of materials. So for me, I was always interested to create as well as explore the world of novel class of materials. And as I mentioned, because I was interested in the field of biology and medicine, I wanted to invent or create materials in the biomedical applications field. I mean, materials can be used for anything, petroleum, construction, road, plastics, right? But for me, it was very interesting to work with materials for medical applications. So I joined the NUS Material Science and Engineering for my PhD program between 2012 to 2016 under Professor Ding Jun. Prof. Ding is amazing. It's a very great mentor. He's like very nurturing mentor, I would say. So my PhD experience was absolutely amazing. I was given the freedom to work on magnetic nanomaterials for cancer theranostics. The word theranostics here means it's a combination of therapy as well as diagnostics. So I have invented magnetic nanomaterials that can be used both to treat cancer as well as to detect cancer. So the overall experience during my material science and engineering PhD, it was not just within the four walls of, lab, right? It was beyond. As in NUS, you can see around the campus, NUS is always, the life is beyond your lab, beyond research, beyond education. So I had a very empowering PhD, I would say. And everyone in the NUS material science department is very, very friendly. We have a very strong community within the students, within the researchers, administrative staff, professors. So we all have a fair share of problems when we do 4 years of PhD, right? So everyone is open to listen to each other's problem and help solve the problem. So I would say it was amazing. Amazing 4 years of PhD. I also got to invent novel class of materials, which I always wanted to do. So it was a great experience. And after my PhD, I joined as a postdoctoral researcher with the NUS Wireless Bioelectronics Lab. So I just wanted to bring the aspect how material science can be used in the field of bioelectronics, more so specifically wireless bioelectronics. So when I joined the NUS Wireless Bioelectronics Lab, I was a very new postdoc, one of the first postdocs, right? So I was working with Dr. John Ho, who is an expert in the bioelectronics field. But I, as a postdoc, one of the first postdoc, had this material science and engineering background, and we are a very interdisciplinary field. So I used to think about one idea a day, like for the first 3 months, thinking about what exactly do I want to do my postdoctoral research on. And I did my postdoctoral research for 4 years again. So that was like another PhD. So in my postdoctoral research, I have invented a very novel class of conductive surgical sutures. So that's where I can apply my material science knowledge. So surgical sutures, we all know when there's a wound or something, doctors use sutures to stitch the wound. Nowadays, there are adhesives, even staplers, right? But still, when there is a surgical wound or surgery happening deep within the body, sutures are still the very easy to use medical device to stitch up the wound, right? So I have invented a conductive suture. So why should the sutures be conductive? Because I wanted to make it wirelessly powered. So I want these sutures to be responsive to wireless communication. So the first step is to make it conductive. But at the same time, when in my attempt to make it conductive, you can see here, I'm able to stitch with the sutures, conductive sutures, without compromising on its inherent mechanical property, which is to stitch, right? It has to be flexible, it has to be biocompatible. So material science means, okay, oh, I have an all class of conductive suture. It's not just that. It's about you should not have compromised on the mechanical properties of the suture. You should not have compromised on the biomaterial properties of the suture. So as a material science expert, I have the, I should be aware of all these aspects, and it's a very holistic approach before. And on top of it, it also should be compatible with all these electronics. So it was a very great experience working with creating or inventing this novel class of WISE sutures, I call it, wireless sensing sutures, where I had to apply every aspect of my material science knowledge, because prior, during my PhD, I was only working on nano materials, right? So now this is beyond nanomaterials, and you also have to look at different aspects of material science. So that was a very enriching experience, very great experience. So that we got our work published very recently in Nature Biomedical Engineering. It went on to be the cover of the October 2021 issue. And this is the title of the paper. You can reach out to me if you want to get the full paper as well. So material science engineering is not limited to material science department alone. It's beyond, right? So this is one classic example of how, as an expert in this field, we are tasked to do a very interdisciplinary work, right? And this is again a medical device. So medical device is a different field. Again, the core of it is material science, right? So we are looking at that aspect. It was a great experience. And so far, I shared about my educational background and research background, but all along, I'm a very translational person. Translation means bringing a technology from lab to market. Getting high impact factor papers were all great. As a researcher, I'm very proud of such accomplishments. But still, in my lifetime, personally, I would be very happy when someone uses my technology, right? As a material science person, I invent a novel class of material, and if someone is going to use it, then that makes me happier and more satisfied. So I'm a very translational person. I believe that translation is the key to physical and mental well-being of human beings. I truly believe in that. So I went on to commercialize the conductive or the wireless sensing sutures that I had invented in NUS. So yeah, I managed to get a few awards, Young Investigator Award and a few translational awards for my research. It was a very great 4 years again in NUS. Yeah. And currently, very recently, in August 2021, I joined A-STAR, and I'm more specifically working with the Translational Biophotonics Lab housed inside the Institute of Bioengineering and Bioimaging. There are two aspects of my work. One aspect is there are different scientists who have created different technologies, and I help them commercialize the technology. And the other aspect, as a material science person itself, is for me to develop novel class of materials for femtech applications. Femtech, again, is female technology. Any technology that is meant to help women's well-being is femtech. So I'm developing novel class of materials to help pregnant women, women in their menopausal age, like after 45, 50 years of age and all that, to have a better quality of living lifestyle, right? So that's my current job. So yeah, so all this was about my professional life. And apart from that, I am very truly grateful for the professional life that I have. And it was always possible. Whatever I did, whatever little I have achieved, it's because of mentors, be it my parents, sisters, husband, my professors, and my friends, right? So I truly believe in mentorship. So I founded the Edify project, which is a mentorship platform to help empower every deserving talent to go into the next phase of their life. Doesn't matter which background or which field they are coming from. So Edify is here to empower people. Before the pandemic, I used to travel a lot and conduct a lot of workshops, but now during the pandemic, I do all virtual workshops and seminars to help deserving talents. And as I mentioned, I'm a very entrepreneurial person. That's why I like translational research, right? So I'm also a startup mentor to different programs like Seed Stars and C Lab Ventures, and actually a lot of more than what I've listed here. So all this I used to do during my free time. Whenever I'm free, this is my way of giving back to the community. Especially, I enjoy being a startup mentor because I get to meet a lot of researchers like me from different backgrounds and try to help them commercialize their technology, which is also what I like doing every day. And yeah, all my material science endeavors, like whatever I did so far, except for the mentoring part, somewhere or other, it's related to material science and engineering, right? Might be even before my PhD in material science, I was always working on materials. So materials are not just, when we say material science and engineering, people tend to think, oh, it's not for girls, it's for men, because materials means like what? Construction materials, road materials, plastics, rubbers, right? Yeah, that's great, but material science is beyond that as well. So it's a very female friendly and male friendly field. So all my endeavors is because of my research and translation in material science and engineering. So the latest recognition is that I was listed as one of the 100 women in technology in this field. And that's because definitely of my research and translational background in material science and engineering. I should say I came here to Singapore almost a decade ago, just a girl who wanted to do PhD in material science, right? But over the few decade, the past decade, slowly and surely, if we are able to create anything that is impactful, not just materials, but any invention or innovation that's impactful, Singapore is very welcoming to recognize the talents. And for me, if you look at my journey from 2012 August to 2021 August, I was in NUS and I was working on materials. So this recognition is basically because of material science background and also the kind of research and translation that I did in NUS, right? So yeah, I just want to tell that this is a field that is biomedical engineering, bioengineering, all these fields are great. So material science is also the core of most of these fields, because it doesn't matter whether you're working on bioelectronics or a medical device, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it has to be made up of some material, right? So this is a very great field to work in. And it's, as I mentioned, it's a very female-friendly field too. We can make an impact. As I'm working these days on femtech technologies, right? I feel that rather than men developing technologies for women, materials for women. It would be great if more women can develop materials for women's well-being. So yeah, men and women together, I think we can all make an impact in this field. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kalidasan. I'm sure our audience are inspired by your experience and how translational research allows us to directly bring the benefits of research to the masses. Now that we are done with the first part of the webinar, and if you have any further questions pertaining to admissions, you may connect with the admissions advisor through the QR code on the screen.